The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, weekend editions here at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Run the Damn Ball Kraynak, Elijah Herbel in. Welcome, fellas. Good to be back together. Kraynak, put that other phone down, my friend, and just text away. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. And thankfully, no more DJ Two Phones. Right?
Yeah.
That's been my nickname for a while up here, DJ Two Phones. Anybody that's had to do that because of work and then personal and whatever, it's a lot to manage, right? When you have two phones.
I think you look down. You look big time, though. I mean, you look important.
You're sitting there. You're like, yeah. And I mean, thank you. Really not, though. But, anybody, it's a lot to manage because some people maybe have one phone and you don't really want to like make a big deal and have everybody switch, and it's a lot of manual tech, it's a whole thing. And we discovered that you just did not have my other phone, the one that I now keep and maintain. You did not have that, even though I have evidence of texting you on that phone from 2018. But somehow you must have deleted that. You delete me.
No, never.
No, you delete me.
No,
Chris, I caught you.
I did not.
Chris,
Kraynak, how long have we been doing radio? 1997?
Something like that. You deleted me, dude.
Corral Buchalter was taking carries in the spring game. Okay.
You probably just got a new iPad.
No, I still have the same iPad.
New phone.
No, this doesn't mean he deleted you. This means he just never saved you.
But I save save about everything.
I know.
And
I know.
No, it was always the 402 number that I always give you some sort of morning sunshine, whatever, to make sure both our heads are right about 6 a.m.
No, you literally text that, just so folks know. Like, you literally say morning sunshine at about 6. That's about how I start every Saturday at about 6:18. And what that really means is, are you up? Like, and not one of those that you send late at night. You up?
No.
And early morning, like, dude, you gonna be there? I'm flying solo. That's what that is. That's a status check. Is really what it is.
No, it's a good morning, my friend. Good to spend time with you. I can't wait to do this radio. But listen, I legit this week, and if there's evidence, I wish we could air it, because I go to Elijah like, who the hell's saying this is my new number? And Elijah's like, I don't know. You don't ever not save a number. And
then that led to you guys like Googling?
Yes, we were trying to.
Is that Trev?
No,
is that Frost?
No, I'm good.
Is that T.O.?
I'm good there.
It's T.O.
I'm good there. But I just like, who is this? And lo and behold, it's really an important number I didn't know nor have.
Yeah. Well, and see, I had wrongfully assumed I had written, this is my new number, seeing the text thread that we had from 2018, thinking that you would know with me. But now I know. If it's a 2018 text, you have no use for it. By the way, if just having done this, I had an iPhone and then also a Google Pixel. So I got to see kind of both sides, Android, iOS. I'm telling you, in the for what it's worth column, they are not paying me.
Yet.
Obvious. Yet, right? Go Android, man. I'm telling the Pixel is just better. It's just better. Now, you do lose the text bubbles, which are very exciting. When you're texting somebody and then all of a sudden you see the bubbles and you know that they're responding. Like, that's very exciting.
What?
Do you know what I'm talking about? Like,
someone's, they're not ignoring me. dot.
And then the anticipation, like, what are they going to say?
And then it goes dark.
Oh, my goodness. You lose that when you're texting people cross-platform here. But other than that, I think it's fast. So for just, those folks out there that are kind of choosing, what do I do? I'd go Pixel.
Hi, Mark, run the damn ball
advice.
Kraynak here for my new smartphone. So let's dive into camp. How is everyone's hydration level this morning?
What is that? So you just sent me this morning, and there's a chart.
It's a chart that is up in the Longhorn locker room. You've seen it on Facebook. You've seen it on Twitter before. Max Olson got to meet him at Shafe's wedding with The Athletic. Put this out, and the Longhorn hydration chart, championship hydration.
1 through 3.
1 through 3 is just like white, little shade of yellow, like faded highlight yellow.
It's like a gradient all the way down from white to brown, 1 through 8 in terms of your level.
So what are you depositing when you go to the can in the morning? What's your hydration level? What type of health are you in?
Well, I can say I was talking about this chart on Wednesday, actually.
Okay.
It's funny you should send this in this morning because on Wednesday, after the show, I got home and I just had a stomach ache. I couldn't figure out why. Like, I was just not feeling good. And then I was just like thinking back on my day and I went, you know what? I don't think I drank a lick of water all day. Like, and it hit whenever I went to use the can, and it hurt. And I'm like, this isn't right.
It hurt. Was it burning, Elijah? That might be something else.
No, it was not burning.
Okay,
There's no burning love going on.
It was a weak stream, and
I believe there's a free clinic on campus for students, just in case.
And well, I was like discussing with my roommate, I was like, my stomach hurts. I'm not quite sure why. And then I explained this, and he says, "You're a bad guy."
Yeah.
And I had no idea what he was talking about. And then he sent me the hydration chart and said, "You're a bad guy," and the color was about accurate.
So there's four levels
Yes.
on this chart. So 1 through 3, you are at championship hydration level. This is real, by the way.
Yeah.
And then below that is selfish teammate. If you register a 4 through 5.
Means you like an old Milwaukee or 17 occasionally.
Below that is blatant disregard for your teammates. You are headed to, quote, Area 51, unquote. And then the worst one is you're a bad guy.
Well,
And this is Sarkisian saying hydration's been a problem, and he thought it was very important that they bring it up. And I'm like, of all people,
yes,
Sarkisian would know about hydration levels.
he would. And those of us that lived in a kidney stone era have hit the 8 range on this chart from time to time.
Bad guy.
I've been a bad guy a lot, allegedly. So, Kraynak, let's talk a little bit here about week 1. What's the optimism meter for Mark Skurs? That's why you follow Kraynak on Twitter at Mark Skurs, at Schmidt_radio, Chris Schmidt, and at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. Where you at, man? Is that optimism meter creeping up after week 1 of camp? Are you
like clockwork?
right?
Of course it is.
A big red storm's coming, and it's headed to Champaign 3 weeks from today.
It's so hard not to believe right now. It's just, you're like, how is it not going to happen? They have 14 defensive linemen that can play.
Right.
All the receivers are 7'12". You're just like, it's so hard not to get, but it's easy to kind of bring yourself back down when you just look back at recent records and say, no, I'm not going to do it. Just because I know these people's names does not mean they are going to be productive in the Big Ten. Does not mean they're going to be productive in the Big Ten. But as you look across it, I was thinking about this, Chris. We could spend literally an entire segment or more just talking about the defensive line and the amount of options that you have there. Now, are there any Grant Wistrom All-Americans on that defensive line?
No.
Probably not.
Not yet.
But are there multiple potential draft picks? Yes.
Sure.
I count at least 3.
Stilly.
At least 3.
Daniels.
Yep. Robinson. At least those guys. And then Casey Rogers has a shot.
I like Rogers.
Jordan Riley, we don't really know yet. Ruquan Buckley, he's a few years away, but big dude. Nash Hutmacher, right? Like
Polar Bear. Yeah, there was some nice praise by Coach Tuioti on Polar Bear with what he's been doing. But
you have, in a 3-man front, you have, 6 guys that have legitimate playing experience that you could rotate in and out? At least at least 4, right? Rodgers, Stille, Robinson, Daniels. Like, you know what you're getting with those guys. They're productive.
Don't forget D-Train. D-Train's been battling back from injury, and he's reshaped his body. And
he's flashed in the past. Like, absolutely.
Who are you most excited about on the defensive line? Let's talk about that optimism level, right? Where's the meter at? Where's the dial? And if you had to pick one of the defensive linemen that you're going to kind of ride with or buy stock in, who is it? Because let's be honest. You have questions about the running game. You're wondering about the wide receivers. You know, that potential turning into reality Saturday afternoons or Saturday night under the lights. And then you go to the defensive side of the ball with all that experience back. Well, the true difference maker that will make this defense go from good / decent / respectable to good to great is going to be a pass rush, okay? And it's going to be getting after somebody on an obvious passing down, or it's going to blow up a drive early on a first or second down. Who's that guy? Is it going to be an outside back, or is it a guy that's got their hand in the dirt? And there's a ton of candidates, and from a scheme standpoint, this goes back to early Monday with Coach Chenander talking about scheming open or just winning the one-on-one battle. You can do either way, but what's Nebraska going to have to do? We hearken back to 2009. Well, 2009 had, you want to talk NFL dudes, 2009 had a ton of NFL guys on the roster, but all they had to do was sit back in base defense or just drop your normal 7 and let your 4 pass rushers, Pierre Allen, Barry Turner, Ndamukong Suh, and Jared Crick, go murder a quarterback all by themselves. They could all win one-on-one battles, and they got a lot of one-on-one battles because Suh was dancing with 3 dudes. You know, I mean, my thing here is I like what Robinson can do as a run stopper already. What's the next level for his game? I think he can be a special ball player. Ben Stille is old hat and really nice, especially when they put him at nose on third down. He can get after it. I'm excited about a guy like Polar Bear, just what he can do collapsing the interior of the pocket. And there's things that you do, and you don't always have to sack the guy, but, man, you want to hurry, you want to get a hit, you want to knock a ball down, you want to force a quick throw that's inaccurate. I mean, it doesn't always have to be sack, take to the ground, loss of 4, 2nd and 14. So that to me is, who am I most excited about? I'm probably going to look at a name that is very familiar, but what can he do as a force in the middle? And that's Snacks Daniels, right? Yeah. If he's a guy that can put X number of plays together, right? Man, he can blow things up. And he's again, it's kind of hype season right now, but from what Coach Tuioti's talking about and just how there's some bravado there with Daniels, he's a guy I might buy stock in. That's where I think I might be spending my money. There are a couple of things there with defensive line. I think the underappreciated thing about the 2009 and 2010 defenses is the level of conditioning those guys had to where they didn't have to come off the field. And they maintained a level of productivity throughout a game that most D lines just didn't, right? Because they were in supreme physical shape. That's the other thing about Suh. Like, yes, he was super disruptive, crazy athletic, super strong, but the dude did not tire out, right? He found another gear throughout the game, no matter what. And was just as strong in the fourth quarter. You just didn't have to take him off the field. Well,
it was a little bit easier whenever you weren't out there for 15 play drives, whenever you could actually get some 3 and outs. I feel like it's a little bit easier to stay fresh.
Helps. I feel like you have that with Stille. He's intrigued me ever since he was recruited, just because he was playing safety. He's returning kicks. He's punting. They split him out as a tight end. So he has athleticism. And then you couple that with him being a state champion wrestler, where he has really good cardiovascular conditioning and endurance just kind of built in. You can't wrestle without that stuff. And then now he's had this time 6 years. to reshape his body, get used to that body at 290 pounds or 295 or whatever he's listed at now. He's used to that weight. He's in great condition. Remember the Penn State sack that he had, or the I don't even know if it was a sack as much as it was a quarterback hurry. I can't remember. But the end of the Penn State game,
I think he got credit for the sack where it was the hammer throw, right? I mean, it was the hammer throw of the quarterback.
And so, but that showed, and by that point, remember, Penn State was on the field a lot, and that defensive line was, really had to dig deep just physically to be able to still produce. And he's the guy that did, right? And it's because of his conditioning. He was ready to go all the way to the very end. So you got him, you got that kind of stalwart. And then you have, and I was exactly going to go there too, you have Daniels. He has the most disruptive capability by far. He even showed that a couple years ago at Iowa, I think when he was a freshman, where they brought him in. He could only play a few snaps, but when he did, the offensive line moved back. And all of a sudden, Iowa's run game was not doing really well. But you couldn't count on him for more than a couple of plays, and Iowa ended up getting the win. So if that guy can even increase his product or his just the number of plays he can be in, by 3 to 4 snaps a drive or something like that, he's your disruptive guy. And then I think you have Robinson and Casey Rogers and DeAndre Thomas that fall somewhere in the middle of those three. Robinson's just going to continue to develop. He's got size he can't teach. I think Rodgers is sort of from that Stilly mindset of just like, you call it a motor, but it's also just physically being able to do it, right? Just physically being in good enough condition to do it. And he was a multi-sport athlete. He played lacrosse and other sports. So he's probably got a different level of conditioning than some of the other guys. So I just feel like you have so many options on the defensive line to where you can just keep fresh bodies coming at people, coming at an offense on the regular, and they're all competent players. It's not just that you have numbers. It's like you have numbers of guys that have produced. They have absolutely produced. And now you're sprinkling in a Jordan Riley, who's kind of an X factor that we don't really know about. But physically, when you see him, I was at Fan Day. I took the kids to Fan Day. Jordan Riley sticks out. I mean, he sticks out.
He had his own table, dude.
Physically, the guy and then Jalen Weaver.
Oh my God, I was gonna bring him up. We talked to his coach last fall when he committed, Weaver, and at the time he was like 6'8", 280. He's listed at 6'8", 320 on the Huskers website.
He was kind of stomping around post practice. And we're all gathered for the recording / speaking session with, this was Chenander, and there's Jalen Weaver marching along, and 6'8", 320. I mean,
and that's not even true.
Giant.
He's way north of that. He's way north of that.
He was not in Kraynak, and he just looked like a mountain.
He ran the second leg of his team's 4x100 meter dash last year in high school. And I'm sure he's probably put on some weight since then, just because 320 is a lot to be carrying 100 meters, but if he can live up to that athletic freak billing that he had whenever he came in here, I mean, you could think he could be getting playtime sooner rather than later. But the question is, him
and Buckley both have come in ahead of schedule because of their gifts. Go ahead.
Tony Tuioti this week said that he was encroaching on 400 pounds.
He didn't look like it, though. I go 6'8", 320. I'm like, okay, he looked big, yes, but it was more the height and then the way his body was carrying whatever it was carrying, and it didn't look sloppy is where I'm going.
So, and then on top of that, so Adrian Martinez does a podcast now.
Yes. He
had Trevor Robinson and Damian Daniels on and asked about, hey, who were some of the freaks on the defensive line? Both of them were like Jalen Weaver, like, whoa. And Damian Daniels, he's like, hey, give it a couple years. I'm talking 2-time All-American. And Robinson's like, that dude's going to hurt some people. So, like, here are some veteran defensive linemen that are playing that are just like, whoa, this guy is different. And so if you can get a few snaps out of him, special packages, you bring in this guy that's just a monster. Now, will it happen? We don't know. And it's hype season, of course. But I'm telling you, at Fan Day, I've seen two human beings that just like basically make you drop your jaw that have been in a Husker uniform. And Tony Tuioti, or not Tony Tuioti, sorry, Taniu Finoti.
Yeah, Finoti was...
Finoti, if you just saw him walking around, you're just like, what? How are heads made that large? You're just like, you can't even believe the size of the you're just like, if you wore a fitted hat, it would be like a 10 and a half. They don't even make those. They had to special order his helmet for sure. Like, what? And then the other guy was Leiden Murtaugh. Just physically, when you saw him in person, you're like, what the? How are you real? Weaver's like that. Just physically, like he's in on the table with all these defensive linemen, Stilley, Daniels, Riley, Buckley, Hutmacher, and they all look like just school children next to him. You cannot believe his size. I'm telling you will notice, like the second he actually trots on the field, you're gonna be like, who's number 50? What the? Now, if he can actually move and do something for you,
there's a lot of athleticism with Weaver. To bring this background with who you buying stock in on the defensive line and hype season and that optimism meter. The thing that makes me excited about Daniels, if I'm a Nebraska fan, is you need somebody on that line to get some attention from the rest of the offensive line, so you can open up said one-on-one matchups, right? And if Snacks is getting double teamed and still anchoring that middle, that's good. That's good for a Robinson, and that's good for a Hutmacher. That's good for a Stilley. That's great for a Casey Rogers or a D-Train or whoever they settle on for their 3-down linemen. You're going to have a fourth rusher somewhere come in, and that's what I'd be about. And the thing that you're excited about too is just the progress Nebraska made. They were better. All right, they were better against the run. They were good against the run a lot of the time during the season. Illinois game. That was not good. But for the most part, Nebraska looked different with teams trying to line up and smash mouth them. It wasn't happening for the first time in a long time last year.
No, Ohio State struggled to do it even, right? Like they were effective, but it was not a walk in the park.
Ohio State made their money going deep.
Yeah. Exactly. Ohio State. I mean, really, the only team that made their hay on the ground against Nebraska was Illinois. Mm-hmm. That's the outlier. Everybody else kind of Minnesota to a degree.
Fourth quarter, after you did nothing offensively for 3 quarters.
Yeah, to a degree they did too. Yeah. So, I mean, you have that alone. Like the defensive line alone. Like if you could choose, if you're starting a program, and you take it to like compare it to like say a video game where you like assign a score or a quality level to each unit. I would choose either offensive line or defensive line.
Sure.
Right. If you had to just choose one group that you're just going to make scale all the way up to 100 in terms of ability level, you're choosing offensive line or defensive line, right? Like. That's just your best opportunity because they can just screw stuff up before. It doesn't matter if you have great receivers, if you have a defensive lineman in your quarterback's face the whole game. It just doesn't matter, right? Ask Frank Costa about that, right? Like ask Danny Werfel about that. If
you're playing at home.
Yeah, just like
Frank Costa has been called on the Hail Varsity Saturday morning bingo card.
Well, but I'm saying, right? Like that. Look, he had great receivers. Uh-huh. Florida had great receivers, but Nebraska's defensive line was in his face the whole time, and so it didn't matter. So that's what you would pick. You'd pick defensive line, you'd pick offensive line, and defensive line where Nebraska's at right now is in really good shape to the point where you could sustain an injury or two and probably be okay, right? And I don't think there's a lot of position groups on many college teams, period, that you can say that about. But with the 6th year, with working with Duvall for 3 years, with the way they've recruited, they're in solid shape there, and that is a great place to start for a Big Ten team.
Well, and you got to have depth along all your positions where you can sustain an injury or two at just about every single position. That's the depth you're trying to build. Injuries are going to happen in the Big Ten, especially along the front 7 on defense, and especially along your offensive line. I mean, the only position I feel like you should feel like you can go in and have your one guy for a season is quarterback. And even then, with how much Nebraska has run their quarterback in recent years, you got to expect that. I mean, Adrian, if he's running the ball at the same clip he was last year, which, God, I hope he does not running the ball as much as he was last year. I mean, you got to expect that he's going to pick up some knocks just because you're going up against physical Big Ten defenses. And I feel confident about the depth along the offensive line. I think they can still play well through a couple injuries. The defensive line, I think in the secondary, you feel good if there's some injuries. Where I'm concerned about injuries at wide receiver, I know we had Greg Smith on yesterday saying he felt good about the top 6 guys that they have at wide receiver, but if you have 1 or 2 guys go down to injury, I'm not sure you have the depth at wide receiver to be able to sustain that same level of play. And I feel the same about that linebacker position. Ever since Will Honus went down, that whenever this Nebraska defense uses 4 linebackers a game that rotate in and out, if you have 1 or 2 guys go down along the linebackers, I feel a little worried about that. But generally, this is the most confident I have felt about depth on a Husker football team since Scott Frost has arrived.
Another name,
No question.
another name to remember that's gotten some run early in camp is Colton Feist.
Yep.
He's a walk-on that's kind of wowed. He's at 6'2", 280 out of UTAN. Percentage of tackles by defensive linemen returning. Your tackles made on the line of scrimmage by defensive linemen, almost 97% back. So when we talk returning production, the thing that you want to see jump in 2021, sacks by a defensive lineman, 1.5 by Ben Stilley. You had 8 by Khalil Davis in 2019.
Yeah, you would like to see that production increase, and you'd also like to see, but you also have to keep in mind, I don't care where the sacks are coming from, as long as they're happening.
Yeah.
Right. And so if it's the defensive line's job to just eat up blockers so linebackers can do it, or someone can come off the edge, or so JoJo can come off the edge, or Cam Taylor-Britt, or whoever, that's fine by me. And I'll tell you the other quick observation, because I know we're up against the clock here. Quick observation just from Fan Day. And this is just physically looking at people, right? So take it with a grain of salt. But Gabe Ervin, he's built different than the other running backs. He just is. Wingspan, shoulders,
Athlete.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like he taking nothing away from the other guy. Yant is huge. Scott's a little brick. Sevion's kind of like, quintessential, like just, well proportioned, all that. But Ervin, he stood out physically. He looked a lot different than the others. So I understand why he's getting the run that he is. And then plus when you saw him in the spring game, you can understand it too. I think that's your front runner for running back.
Be nice to have a couple of workhorses emerge. Weekend edition, Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel producing as we'll hit the rewind. It is the Great Rib Judgment Day, as they say, as the smoke's flowing in Boulder. Not that smoke, but Gary Barnett is
both kinds of smoke, probably.
Right, but the Barnett household, it's the smoke or the ribs that are going on. So we'll talk some college football, some thoughts on the Nebraska season with Coach Barnett in the rewind, Brandon Vogel at the 8 o'clock hour, and then the Iron Horse Gary Sharp at 8:30. Thanks for spending time on a Saturday with Hail Varsity Weekend. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Coach Barnett next.
Early to rise with Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Here's Chris Schmidt and Mark Kraynak.
We welcome in the coach with Northwestern in Colorado, Gary Barnett with us. Coach, how are we doing today?
Chris, it's getting close to this big rib cook-off. I'm getting a little nervous.
Oh, Coach, I got to go with the build-up, the lead-up. Have you picked out the baby backs yet?
I got the baby backs. I've got 24 hours to make a decision, and I'm watching the barbecue channel. That's not a good thing to do. It's like I read Golf Digest before a golf tournament and always come up with something that might work, and it never works. And so I got to settle down here, But we've got the trophy all picked out, and Church isn't playing golf on Saturday morning. We always play with golf on Saturday morning. He's not playing, and so now I'm getting really nervous.
Okay, so let's relate this back to football without getting into too crazy a detail. Did you have to go through a similar process before they're all big games, but before the really, really big games with not outthinking yourself?
Yeah, exactly right. And as you know, when I was with Coach McCartney, he did a lot of that, and I just didn't like it. Then I found out I was the head coach, and all of a sudden I start doing that. I'm going, oh no, I can't do this to these guys. But yeah, you'd always think, you turn over every stone all the way up until kickoff, and that can drive you nuts, or you never know. You think it may get you a first down that you need in a game like that. So yeah, it's the same process.
Well, I'm not going to be able to make it out tomorrow. I should say for Saturday. But will you send me a pic or send us a pic of your ribs if you go with the wet or the dry rub, and of course the winning slab of ribs? Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a picture of Church's, and I'll give you a Church's, and I'll give you a picture of ours, and then we'll see who wins. So that's pretty awesome. That's pretty good. The great Coach Barnett rib-off is underway Saturday, and you are a rib perfectionist. You are a guy who loves to smoke ribs, and that's really cool. Coach, I'm interested with a lot of things here as we talk fall camp and we look at Nebraska and we look at college football in general. Take me through the mental part of the game. We kind of just touched on it, but I'm interested in that aspect of Nebraska football as they go into 2021 with there's some noise, there's some pressure, there's always internal pressure in your own standards, but just getting your team's mind right with the confidence aspect. Yeah, and here's what you do. You say, all right, who are we? Okay, you talk about who you were last year, the changes that have been made between last year to this year, and then you say, where are we going? And you establish where this team wants to go because you've talked to all your players. You let them know what that is. You discuss it briefly with them, and then you tell them how you're going to get there. And you outline your plan at that time. Now, part of that plan always includes the 90-10 concept. The 90-10 means 90% of our time was going to be spent on chasing our goals and our dreams, and 10% on internal issues. If we can do that, we will have a really good football team. But the minute that 10% goes to 15, 20, 25, or 30%, meaning that those leaders let internal issues creep into your locker room, into your situation, then all of a sudden your chances of being good are reduced almost 50%. So you really emphasize that, and you want your team to play very businesslike. You don't want them to be high. You don't want them to get too low. You want them to operate at the same level all the time emotionally, and you drill it in and you talk about it the very first day. You also put as much responsibility as you can on the players because it's their team. It's not Coach Frost's team. It's their team. Where do they want this to go? Here's what they have to do in order to do that, and that's how you're going to get there. So, that's your first meeting, your first practice, and your theme as you start the season. That's a good theme. Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, a thought on the red zone. Nebraska's spent more time, or earlier time, I should say, in their practice. At least that's been told to us by a couple of the assistants working on the red zone. Nebraska doesn't have a problem getting into scoring territory, crossing the 50, crossing the 40, getting inside the 20, and even closer to the goal line. But when it comes to cashing in and finishing, that's something that they need to go right for them. And you know how hard that is in the Big Ten against Big Ten defenses and D coordinators. What was kind of your philosophy? How did you go to work on any red zone problems you may have? And obviously you want a bread and butter play down there to make it a little easier. Well, Chris, and that's a problem that every mediocre team has, and so it's so important
that you cash in. Exactly right. You're exactly right. And you said you want a bread and butter play. You want a bread and butter series. You want something that they don't have to think about, that they know whatever adjustment the defense throws at them, they know what to do in that situation. And you have it built in so that you practice it over and over, and the guys get confidence. And it's you should be able to run it without even, like the whole series, the 3 or 4 plays that you got in the series down there. And so you don't have to huddle it. They know you line up and you run it. And, you don't get to run it every game. You get to run it every other game or every 3 games. And, of course, after a couple of games, you build in a few wrinkles here and there. But it's the confidence factor that's really important down there.
Coach Gary Barnett's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Coach, for years in the Big Ten, it felt like the bread and butter plays were ISO, power, those classic I formation running plays. Do you feel that shift in the Big Ten towards, the bread and butter plays being zone reads, RPOs, like how the Big Ten is just changing as we are getting into this new era of college football?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's your safest play is still a quarterback carry, and it's one of your key plays. I mean, I really believe that on inside the red zone and on 3rd and shorts, that it's really hard to stop the quarterback because you always have an extra blocker when you run the quarterback, and the key play in the red zone is the first down, and so I think short yardage. And I think in the red zone, first down especially, that you see and should see a lot of quarterback carries in those situations. And you've got a great guy carrying the football there.
Well, you do. And Adrian's been good carrying the ball. Now, the ball security side of things has been a talking point, and that's just quarterbacks, the more they carry, the more they have a chance to cough up because, they're not usually getting drilled in practice, right? So what's your take on how you'd use Adrian? Let's just take Adrian back to an offense you had at Colorado or Northwestern. Would you put a pitch count on him running the ball this year?
Probably not.
No?
No, I don't think I would. I mean, he's a competitor. He's an athlete. He's learned a lot in the 3 years prior to this. He's hard to stop, the ball's not heavy, and so and he wants to run it, and so you just get him confident that he's the key in short yardage and in goal line situations, especially first down in the red zone. And so, no, I wouldn't put a pitch count on him necessarily. You can't do that on a quarterback that's his caliber and the kind of offense that you have. So, no, I don't think I would. Now, as the season wears on, I might think about that, but no, not initially. Initially, he's my guy, and until one of these tailbacks prove that he's a lot better runner with the ball than Adrian, Adrian's going to get his shot.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. The great Barnett rib-off on Saturday. We're talking Nebraska preseason. Take me through that as a coach working through and trying to pare down to a go-to number one and a nice number two. There are guys to pick from at Nebraska, but no one's stood out over the last couple 3 seasons or been able to take it and run since Divina Zigbo. Is it stressful trying to figure out the trust level with a freshman or even a grad transfer? You've played both upperclassmen and freshmen at that running back spot at the skill spot.
Well, I don't know that you always know coming out of camp what you've got. For example, 2001, Chris Brown, we finished camp and he was probably number 3, but he did have 2 runs in camp where he ran through our entire defense. That never happens in camp because you're usually playing against your first defense. But, I think if you approach it a certain way that all 3 of you guys are going to play and you're all going to be critical, I don't know if you need a 1-2 punch you just play the player that gets hot sometimes. And they all know that they're going to play. They're all, play the same position. They all get the same coaching. And then you've got to, share the reps with them, and especially early on to find out who the guy is for each kind of play. Because, for example, 2001, Cortland Johnson was an all-conference, all-Big 12 tailback, and he was probably our third-best tailback. But he was so good in third downs and with screen passes and things like that he became a really valuable player and ends up being all-conference. Chris Brown and Bobby Purify weren't. So, you play to their strengths a little bit as much as you can.
Does matchup also speak to...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We went to K-State, and we knew that was going to be a heck of a physical game. And Chris Brown, we gave him the ball almost every time because he was a big physical back, and that's the kind of game it was. So, yeah, matchups have a great deal to do with it.
Gary Barnett. Coach, how'd you shoot today?
I had a great first 9, and the second 9 wasn't so good. I had to practice for about an hour and a half so that I could sleep tonight.
I'm sure it was pretty solid. Coach, I want you to have a great rib-off on Saturday. Enjoy the ribs, make folks smile, and win that trophy, all right?
Yeah, well, the trophy is a farting pig. So I'll send you a picture of maybe I can't say that on the radio.
You're
but
fine. Whatever.
I just did.
A farting pig. Where do you get those?
Amazon.
They have everything.
Amazon. You can get it. Yep.
Well, good luck with the pig, and smoke them ribs.
All right, Chris. Have a great one.
You too. Take care, Coach. Appreciate
Bye-bye.
you. There he is. Good stuff from the coach, Gary Barnett. The quest for the farting pig begins today in Boulder with the great Barnett rib-off. We'll see how that shakes out.
I'm not sure if we have Mark Kraynak.
Kraynak, you with us, bud?
Whoa.
Yeah, I think we kind of ambushed Mark here.
Yes. No,
I'm sort of surprised. Normally at this time, the rewind runs through, we go to commercial, and then we hit the top of the hour.
No, that's fine.
And,
That's Coach Barnett talking about his rib-off in Boulder today, and the prize is a farting pig.
Have you ever judged a barbecue contest? I've had to do that twice.
We almost made the trip to Boulder to be a judge for the Barnett rib-off.
Dude, look, barbecue is fantastic.
You know who
Being
has
a judge?
You know who has judged barbecue? It's Brandon Vogel.
We should talk to him.
No, we will in about 10 minutes. Brandon Vogel is in the on-deck circle. Gary Sharp with us. And we're winding down hour 1. But, yeah, a shorter sit-down with Coach this week. But good insight. Great insight on, kind of getting your team mentally prepped. And that's the one question we have about Nebraska. It's not the talent or the ability, but can they go do it, right? They want to win. They haven't won. How do you jump that and clear that hurdle? Hour 2 on the way. Hail Varsity Radio.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Thanks for hanging out. Hour 2, it's Hail Varsity Radio, Weekend Edition, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel, and find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio. Chris Schmidt at Mark Skurs for Mark Kraynak, and at Herbal Essence for Elijah. Let's talk some football and some barbecue and all things here with volleyball. We welcome in Brandon Vogel, managing editor, HailVarsity.com and magazine. His book with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, how's your Saturday, man?
Oh, it's going pretty well. I'm alone on baby care today, so just letting you know from the top, this radio spot could go south in a hurry. we'll see.
Well, I think Junior's more than welcome to make his radio debut if he feels so inclined. And so what brandy and cigars here in a couple hours, or what's the plan?
Oh yeah, we're gonna do it all. He's only 14 weeks, but we're gonna go golfing. We're gonna play catch, go fishing. All the father-son stuff.
Well, in 3 weeks you can tailgate again.
There we go. That sounds pretty good.
So I'm going to dive into this before football. We had a lively corn conversation yesterday on the show, how people like their corn. Vogues, you've been a barbecue judge, and maybe next year we'll get out to Boulder for the great Barnett rib-off. But Coach Barnett's proud of his ribs. And how many barbecue contests have you judged?
Have I actually judged? 0. I just got certified to be a judge because I wanted to know what judges look for.
Ah, so, okay.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I've judged but have never been certified. How about that?
There you go.
Combined, we could be a force.
So
Yep.
that's a wonderful pitch for a road trip to Boulder next year. I'll bring you both with. I'm interested. Okay, so what do you look for? What are you supposed to look for when it comes to barbecue judging?
Well, with ribs in particular, since I know that's that's Coach Barnett's 5-star player. People really like fall off the bone, moist, tender ribs. With that, you actually don't, for like competition barbecue, you don't want them fall off the bone. You kind of want to be able to take a bite, have the rib stay there instead of completely disintegrate. So that's one of them. Pull test with brisket is a good one. A good way to know if you've got properly cooked brisket is just to hold it vertically, hold a slice of it vertically, and try and pull it apart. It should give you a little bit of resistance, but should actually pull apart. A dry brisket, Lincoln Riley's brisket, will not pass the pull test.
Well, those are two things to note when smoking season happens. Vogue, some takeaways. What's the pull test like with week 1 of camp here?
It felt kind of like a week 1. I mean, I think the big question coming out of it, and going into it, coming out of it, and for the next 3 weeks remains at running back probably for me. The O-line talk this week was pretty interesting, just in terms of some of the things they're talking about then. But it's kind of the classic example of, it's all until we get to see this team take the field against Illinois. You got to try and personally balance everything out and believe what you want to believe to a certain degree.
Brandon Vogel with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Yeah, what about the offensive line? What about the talk? And what about, I guess, what do you make of it?
Yeah, so a lot of the talk, I mean, Greg Austin had a lot of people probably Googling horizontal leadership earlier this week, which is pretty interesting. And just the way that, you've kind of got two groups of guys that seem pretty close-knit. And it's an interesting blend of, a guy like Cameron Jurgens, who's played a lot of ball up. You've got what I think are two really high-talent tackles, but they're still fairly new. Turner Corcoran is one of the more, he's getting talked about a little bit, but he's one of the more fascinating guys, and I think pivotal guys for Nebraska this season. If he can be, he's going to be good. I'm pretty certain about that. How much does he look like a redshirt freshman who's played one game, getting thrown in there, presumably at tackle for Nebraska this season? I think that's one of the key questions, and I think he'll perform pretty well. But again, it's one of those things you just kind of you take it on faith here in August.
Vogues, there's this balancing act, and we were talking the hype meter, right? As we get closer to kickoff, the hype kind of increases. It's kind of like the old Sean-o-meter, Sean Dunston and Wrigley, right? You'd see a great surge in July before August would happen. And, the Nebraska fan base is more reserved, at least what you see socially on social media with their just blind faith, dive in, it's going to be a great year. It's measured. They don't want to be hurt again. But in the same sense, I listen to the coaches and the players, and more so the players, and the players have been doing more of the positive accolades about one another, and that's all well and good and great. But I don't know, man. I guess count me in that pool of I think they can have a really good year. If we're talking expectations to go bowling, if we're talking win total here, I mean, I guess right now I'm on the side of they do better than just 500. I think there's enough talent to do it, and I know that talent needs to translate, but I guess I'm a little more confident in that happening. The winning part is where I want you to go. Do you have concerns about this team knowing how to win?
I think there's a deal of that, or a decent amount of that. They've just over the past 3 seasons, Nebraska has found itself trailing a lot early, which happens. Good to great teams overcome that. With Nebraska and with the way they're built between offense and defense, I think they're a team that really thrives on kind of getting momentum early. And I'm talking like early in games, but I think you can also talk about this at the season level of getting that momentum early, which provides an advantage to any team, but certainly this one, and then kind of leaning on that advantage to get even more aggressive. And that's been one of the disconnects that I is 10-3 early on. You kind of got to get back in it before you can dial up the aggressiveness, both offensively and defensively, to I think where they want to operate at a normal level. And that's been the difficult part. So at the season level, sure, it's Illinois under a new coaching staff, but a conference road game to open the year feels absolutely pivotal with that, and you come home feeling pretty good, lose that one, and, well, you've got Fordham at 11 a.m. for the home opener, and you're 0-1. It's not exactly the ideal kind of environment I think you would hope for your first game back in Memorial Stadium with fans in the stands. So, this is the case in Nebraska, I think, for 3 seasons is, can you get that momentum early, and then what happens? Because I do think it would look very different.
Brandon Vogel with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Let's look at wide receiver real quick. There wasn't a ton of wide receiver production last year, period. Wandale was the most productive one. He's gone. So you're not bringing back a ton of that. From all your years of looking into statistics and trends, probabilities, is that a huge deal? Like, is it okay? Can you expect that a receiving core that is largely untested, can you expect that? I mean, can they put up numbers, or does statistically, does it say that no, they're unlikely to do that?
Yeah, so there's two things there that I just know from looking at the past, and one is kind of returning production at receiver along with quarterback are the two that are kind of most highly correlated or most strongly correlated to improving the following year. So Nebraska does, unfortunately, which we knew was going to be the case the moment Wandale Robinson transferred, because he was just such a huge share of all of their receiving production last year. So there's that part of it. That part, if you were just looking, kind of leads you to be a little bit less bullish, I think, on the offensive total production in 2021. That said, like, receiver is players
let's
impact early.
Vogues, I'm going to interrupt you. Forgive me for doing that. We're going to redial you and just get another connection with you. We are missing half of the gold you're laying down, brother. So we'll get right back with you in 2 seconds. Thank you so much. Kraynak, good question about the wideouts. We're going to reconnect with Vogel.
Thank you. I majored in journalism.
No,
absolutely.
It's
not surprising that my question was really good.
Absolutely.
Trained for that. I've been training for this, man, my whole life.
No, but it's an exciting time because you have a lot of unknown. But, man, that potential's there. And I think one of the frustrating parts for Nebraska fans is they've been waiting on that potential for a while. And it's not just this staff or this recruiting class, but it's kind of culminated in a lot of years, right? I mean, it's been a buildup.
Picture this. If you want to go 5 wide and you want to bring in your 2 tight ends but split them out.
Sure, flex them.
Right, or split one of them out. Think about this. Like, it doesn't mean that you're going to score touchdowns every time, but think about this. You would have Manning at 6'4", Austin Allen at 6'9", Toure at 6'3", Betts at 6'2", Vokalek at 6'6". Dude, I don't even know that I've ever seen on any level of football. For real, like that amount of size.
It's good front line, and I mean it's the all 500 team, right? Remember playing 500 in the backyard? Huh?
Does that mean that it'll actually work? But I'm just saying, just in terms of sheer, like that is not an easy deal if you're a 5'10" corner or nickel or 6 foot safety, and you are just outsized that much across the board. It's intriguing. That's the best way to put it, right? It's intriguing. Is it going to work? I don't know. But you have that option now on the roster, which is crazy. And it's not that unrealistic of a thing to expect either.
No, because you look at
all 5 of those dudes are going to play.
Yeah, you look at the size, the skill set, the ability. Let's bring Brandon Vogel from Hail Varsity back in. Vogue, thanks for reconnecting with us. Back to the intrigue with the wide receiver group, where you were going with what the potential is and the reality can be on Saturdays.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Don't know where I dropped off, but like the Reader's Digest version of what I was getting to is Nebraska's lack of returning production at receiver traditionally is not a great sign for an offense kind of improving the points it's capable of producing. That said, we've also seen, and we've seen it locally as well, in recent years, it's a spot where you can find some difference makers who are young or maybe just inexperienced. And Nebraska is going to need a little bit of that. I mean, Samori Toure is not inexperienced. He's just inexperienced at this level, and I have very little concerns about that. Oliver Martin is a guy that I'm really high. I think he's going to be high receptions for them. Has been around, has been in 2 different Big Ten programs prior to this one. Still waiting to play his most football, and I think that'll come this year. And then, so that gives you, some guys who have just at least been around. Omar Manning played in junior college, so it's not, you're not starting from scratch. It's not a bunch of freshmen you're throwing out there, but they just haven't kind of produced necessarily at this level or for Nebraska, or in some cases both. So it gives you a little bit of pause, but I feel pretty good about Nebraska's receiver group as a whole.
Brent, I feel like one of the talking points that hasn't been discussed all that much through fall camp has been the departure of Wan'Dale Robinson, because people are excited for the potential of these other wide receivers coming in. But it does leave a Wan'Dale-sized hole in this offense, especially at that duck R position. Do you expect the duck R position to be a big part of this offense still going forward, or with these completely new crop of wide receivers, do you think the offense is going to move in a different direction away from that duck R position?
Yeah, I mean, it'll still be a part of things, and I think Nebraska will still get creative. But I don't think you will see them lean on that position as much as they had to over these past 2 seasons. And, with Robinson, like, it would certainly be better to have him and be talking about this wide receiver group with everything he had done over 2 seasons. I think part of that is the reason he doesn't come up more is, the offense hadn't produced a ton in 2019 and 2020 through no fault of his own. Like, they would have been in a much worse spot without him. But you could see just how much they had to lean on that person. And when the offensive results and the wins didn't come just doing that alone, I think it kind of underscored that, hey, they're still missing pieces around that spot. So I think they'll be okay in the slot. You probably won't see as much. I mean, you'll still see a ton of motion, I think. You probably won't see as many carries out of that spot, and that's probably a good thing for the offense as a whole.
Brendan Vogel's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Vogues, real quick on Coach Lubick, his influence, and, what does Nebraska, I don't want to say shift toward, but what do they look like under more of an influence with Lubick and Greg Austin?
I mean, it'll be a little bit one of our first chances to see it. I mean, I know, Lubick has offensive coordinator stints, but so much of it, I think what Nebraska is going to be in 2021 is reacting to kind of the depth and talent they have. Talking about fall camp takeaways from week one, one of the most interesting, I think, nuggets was Sean Beckman saying, like, hey, we've kept drop charts, charts that are just meant to track how often we got to make these guys run a lap for dropping a catchable ball. And he used that as a way in to talk about, but our tight ends are getting the ball a lot more. So it's one thing to kind of say, yeah, we're going to use the tight ends more. But here was real, evidence that Beckton was willing to share that, hey, through, I think it was 3 practices or 4 practices at that point, it's happening. And they really like the versatility there. I mean, Lubick's comment about those guys at tight end was as effusive as you can get when he was talking about what he had at Oregon and likening Vogel and Allen to that. So I think that remains one of the tweaks that you'll see. And I think the offense needs more downfield passing, and they should have the receivers that are better able to take those shots. I mean, it was just basically not a part of the offense last year. So might end up looking a little more Oregon-like, and that depends too on getting the running game going from that running back spot, because Oregon had 3 or 4 run plays and they just ran them all the time. Nebraska hasn't been good enough to do that yet.
Brandon Vogel with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Running back room, I think it shakes out like this. Just want to get your take, but I think it's Gabe Ervin is your bell cow. He's your starter. He's your every down type player. I think Marvin Scott is his backup for that role. And then I think you have a competition between Yant and Stepp to be the thunder, the big back, the short yardage that will get some snaps within an every down capacity. That's how I see it shaking out. What do you think?
You could almost talk me into anything. I think Irvin has a good shot by year's end to be kind of the top guy. Maybe I'm reading too much into the first week, but I would probably move Stepp up. I came into fall camp before we had any practices, kind of thinking Scott was my leader. Now he might be third or maybe even fourth if Morrison is truly making a move and in the mix. So the one that I'm still the most unsure about is Yant. It's a great story. I've heard he was always pretty big, but I've heard he might be up around 240 right at the moment. So that's kind of a specialty size for a running back in more ways than one. So you're probably where I was, Mark, but now I might be Irvin, Stepp, and then Scott Morrison kind of sharing that third spot.
Brandon, Scott said he doesn't want running back by committee, but the way fall camp's been shaping up so far, it feels like every single day there's a different name coming out of that running back room of who is impressive on the day. Does it feel like we're preparing ourselves for another running back by committee season?
Possibly. I think that might be a little bit of fall camp chatter at this point. These coaches are all going to talk. Position coaches, much less Frost. 2 or 3 times before we get to game week, and they know that people are paying attention to what they say, and they're usually careful to try and get everybody at least a mention. So I think there's a deal of that. Everything we've heard from Frost so far, and said on Thursday or on Friday that they feel pretty good about most of the spots. I think running back's probably one where they don't. So there's still a lot to shake out there, but I do think you'll probably have 2 guys take the bulk of the carries for Nebraska. The thing we're all waiting to see is which 2 at this point.
Vogues, make sure the kid chips in on tip today, okay?
Will do. I mean, I feel like I have to tip him because we made it through without any crying. So good job. Good start to the day.
Vogues, have a great weekend. We'll get closer to kickoff. Thanks for the time today.
All right. Thank you.
There he is, Brandon Vogel with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Managing editor at Brandon L. Vogel. We'll continue this running back conversation. The Iron Horse Gary Sharp's on the way. So, Kraynak, you're buying stock in Scott, huh?
I'm not
saying that that's not a good call or could be a right call. If I'm betting right now, I think it's Stepp, I think it's Irvin, and then I think you're waiting on whoever that and maybe Morrison. I mean, that's kind of my order, but again, it's just week one.
I'm not sold on Stepp yet, just from the
injury standpoint.
Well, and just kind of the film I've seen on him, he just seems more like a specialty back than an every down guy. He just does.
And the thing is he was in a three-headed backfield at USC, so I just don't know if he's given the opportunity to be the feature back. Can he be a little bit less than that thumper third down guy? Because, I mean, he showed flashes of it at USC. I mean, all the highlights you see from him are that one game that USC played against Notre Dame, because that was the one time he put in a feature back performance in his time at USC. The question is can he bring that for an entire season? It's yet to be seen, but I think the potential is there. It's just, can he differentiate himself from those other backs in the room?
Well, and here's the thing with Scott is I think last year he played too stocky, too big, he's too muscle bound. He's trimmed down. He's gotten quicker. I thought he looked pretty good in the spring game too. Mm-hmm. If you just look at performance in the spring game, and you can only take so much out of that, but the guys that moved the best, just physically moved the best, that were quicker, that were faster, that took on contact well. To me, it's a no. I mean, it was Irvin, and it was Scott, and then I think Yant was the intrigue with he'll bowl you over. But yeah, who knows? Now I want to see more of Morrison. I didn't see enough in the spring game to be like, oh, yep, that's the guy.
Well, did he play in the spring game, Sevion?
Yeah, he had a couple snaps. Yep, he had a few, and honestly, I thought he went down pretty easily. I didn't see a whole lot, but it was the spring, and who knows what kind of injuries he was nursing. I think he might be one of your more talented guys.
Yeah, Morrison had 8 carries.
Okay.
Yeah, but it hasn't really come together for him yet.
Scott had 75 yards. Irvin had 12 for then
Ramir, who knows, right?
Right, yeah. We don't know.
To me, he's been too much of an outside guy. I think he's a good fit for what Frost did at UCF. I'm not sure he's a good fit for what they're going to do now. We'll see.
Body type. We'll get to Gary Sharp in a moment. Iron Horse on the way. It's Hail Varsity Weekend presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Glad to have you back.
Yes, sir. You heard me right.
Here are the guys, Schmidt and Kraynak.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're going to bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7.5 minutes after that, you're going to bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes out.
Excellent strategy, sir.
Well, soon enough, 3 weeks from now, it might be red beer or Bloody Mary time as you get the tailgate going. Nebraska, Illinois with the countdown. We welcome in the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp. Sharpie, it's almost here, brother. How are you?
Yeah, that's hard to believe. I mean, the summer has flown by. At 3 weeks from today, we're playing football, and we're a week into camp. It just doesn't. I mean, the summer has flown by, but it's starting to feel like football, and it was good to get a week of either some stuff that make you really optimistic or some stuff that make you go, just wait for 3 weeks.
That's where we're at. So where is the optimism meter for you? Are you? Is it at 12 o'clock? Are you closer to 3? Or are you still at 9?
Well, I think we're as a collective whole, and I think even the guys that are going to impact the game 3 weeks from now are. We just want to play a game because then we can show it. But I do sense, and this has kind of been going on since spring, there is a different vibe. It's almost like a self-correction that they are very aware of what the outsiders are saying, but also what has ailed them, and it has been a point of emphasis. Now, we won't know if they've corrected that until they play 3 weeks from now, but I think the fact that they've identified and are openly talking about some things, and it's just the desire to not suck. I mean, that boils down to you're playing for pride. You don't want to be known as a loser. You know that a lot of the things that have ailed you probably are your own fault. So that's the vibe I get, is that the guys have a desire to fix things and to be better. And maybe that equates to a close game where instead of going sideways, you find a way to pull it out, or you grab a lead early in a game and you hold on to it. I think that's been a problem for Nebraska, is falling behind right away and not being able to come all the way back. It's important for them 3 weeks from today to come out of the gate and to make a statement and get a lead and play with a lead. That'll be the whole thing, I think, all year, guys, is to get a lead, and how does Nebraska play with a lead? Because we've seen them behind too many times.
Gary Sharp with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Real quick, defensively, I think one player and one question that I just literally don't know, and I'm wondering if you've heard. Heard very little about him, but the transfer from Ohio State, Tyreek Johnson, does he find himself in the mix? Is he damaged goods? What, if anything, have you heard and can we expect about him? Because that was a very highly recruited guy out of high school.
Well, Mark, doesn't it appear to you that they've kind of gone out of their way not to build him up? You have an Ohio State transfer, a 5-star from high school, somebody who is at a position which you already had some nice depth of, boy, what he could give you in some specialty packages. I think he has adapted well. It was good to see that he was here early instead of waiting until camp started. But it almost, to me, seems like they know there's something there, but they don't want to build him up. They want to let him show everybody what he can do. But I think he'll be fine. But I don't think he walks in the door and starts, and I think that's a good thing for Nebraska, because that shows you that, well, one guy in particular who is all Big Ten caliber, and then another guy who has worked his way through the system, that some guy's not going to come off the street, even with the accolades and the unknown of, okay, can you push the right button to get him to where he was in high school? He's not going to come in and start. I think that's a good sign. That'll make him work harder. But he's somebody that kind of has to perform for Nebraska. He's somebody that you got in the transfer portal that is big name, and it would also show they couldn't get they couldn't get what they wanted out of him at Ohio State in a deep cornerback room, defensive back room that is an NFL room. Now if he comes somewhere else, does Travis Fisher have the magical fairy dust to sprinkle on him where he prospers here? Because he's not a one-year guy. I mean, you're going to have him for a while.
Gary Sharp's with us, Hail Varsity Radio weekend, Nebraska fall camp, week 1 up and done. Is just 3 weeks away from Nebraska, Illinois. Sharpie, we've been talking a lot about wideouts. We've been talking running backs, and what's your gauge right now, early on here with this running back race?
I think Marquise Stepp is further along than they thought he would be in his rehab. I think they were thinking middle of camp, end of camp. We have a little bit of Marquise Stepp, and he took off during the summer with his rehab. That I think he's nearly 100%. And so that kind of throws a new wrinkle into the running back chase. I still believe that Gabe Ervin is number 1. But Marquise Stepp is either going to be number 1 or number 2. I think now it's trying to figure out who's going to be that number 3. But there's some guys that have been here for a year and a half, 2 years, that they might be playing for their future at Nebraska here in the last 3 weeks. Because I don't, we know that they're going to play 6 wide receivers, so there's going to be 3-4 guys that aren't happy. I mean, I can't imagine them playing 5 running backs. We all want them to play 1 solid guy and then have 2 and a 3. They're not going to play 5. So I think that competition is going to be pretty heated. But I think the top 2 are already taken in Gabe Ervin and Marquise Stepp. But right now, the fact that Stepp is pretty much healthy, I think now you can go, well, let's go back and look what he did at USC. Can he do that here? But like him and Nick Henrich and Adrian Martinez, it all comes down to health. I think that's the biggest takeaway from week 1, guys, is that everybody is healthy, and we didn't hear anything about a guy having to sit out because he was nicked up a little bit. The only person that had an injury that's taken him out of multiple days was Kapai, who is a promising young linebacker from South Dakota. But I think that was a big takeaway. But Stepp's got to stay healthy, and if he's healthy, then we can imagine what he might be and what we saw when he was healthy at SC.
Okay. I still view him as a specialty guy, though, as just your sort of – I can't see him as your keep him on the field for every down like I could a Gabe Ervin. Am I missing something there? What do you see that says that?
No, if you look at him at USC, and I think if you have to look at who he was with at USC to kind of dictated how they used him there, I think the thing that has stood out is he's a better pass catcher than I think Nebraska imagined. And they were able to see that briefly in spring, and then they've seen it in the first week, that out of the backfield he's reliable and you can throw him the football and he'll catch it. So that gives another dynamic where he can stay on the field. I think another thing, if you look at his body, you would think, yeah, he's going to be short yardage, and that's been a point of emphasis this week is short yardage success. Is he's somebody who I feel and they feel can go inside and outside and be able to catch the football and be able to block when he has to stay in for pass protection. I think all those things will put Step in the position, Mark, that he can stay on the field for 3 downs. But you're right. You need every down backs. You don't need just you have specialty backs. Can you get a guy that is on the field through first through third down? But they believe that Step is that guy.
Sharpie, what assistant coach do you like hearing from most? When someone speaks post-practice or after a ball game, what assistant do you enjoy hearing from?
Sean Beckton.
Amen.
I mean, Sean Beckton, I really like listening to Sean Beckton. I think he's got a good perspective on things. And I'm not slighting a couple other coaches, but he's the first one that came to my mind because he spoke recently. He's also one of those guys that isn't going to fluff things for you. So when we're all trying to figure out what version of Adrian Martinez we're going to get, when Sean Beckton talks about Adrian Martinez like he did earlier this week, I go, okay, there's something there. Other people have talked about Adrian, but when Sean Beckton, a guy that I listen very closely to and what he says about his position group or his football team, I go, there's something there, because Sean Beckton's not just going to throw something out there, guys, as fluff and know that everybody's going to eat that up. He's going to tell you the truth. And so he's the guy that I really enjoyed listening to. Boy, talk about a guy that's in a good spot right now with his position group and the way he recruits. That's Sean Beckton.
So sticking with tight end / receiver, a guy that you're familiar with, a guy that nobody talks about. Injuries have derailed him a little bit. Chris Hickman, he saw the field early when he was healthy. He was lauded for his blocking tenacity. Whether or not his skill level was enough, that they definitely liked how physical he was and his mentality when it came to blocking. And then Gary, you saw him in high school. Mm-hmm. That dude can streak down the field. I mean, he's damn near a sprinter. He's got some serious speed at that position. Does he factor in this year? Is he sort of like maybe one of the forgotten guys that we're just not thinking about too much, that if you develop a run game, all of a sudden some of those passing lanes open up? He's a guy that can exploit some of those.
I agree. He's been a disappointment, and it's not entirely his fault. He went from tight end to wide receiver, and they changed his body. But health has been the number one thing. I don't know if he's had back-to-back months where he's been healthy at Nebraska, and that has really derailed what we thought we would see for somebody that, along with Nick Hendrich, I mean, they were the best at Omaha Burke. You've got 2 key tight ends, and they were talked about a lot, and rightfully so, and it can help you in the middle of the field. Chris Hickman is kind of that unicorn guy. He's not in terms of size like what we think of tight ends. He looks more like a little bit of a bigger wide receiver, which, if you look at the tight end position in football, it's kind of going the way of the Chris Hickman, the Thomas Fedoni, guys that aren't these just big, huge, heavy blocker types. They are guys that are a little bit oversized wide receiver. His whole thing, Mark, and Schmidt, comes down, can he stay on the football field? If he can stay on the football field, he's definitely going to be the number 3 tight end, and he could be a very integral part, because I get the sense that Fedoni's going to be a little bit longer than was anticipated when he got hurt in spring. So you're going to need 3 tight ends. 2 you can get by, but at some point you're going to need that 3rd tight end. I think he's a hybrid. I think he's different. I think he will factor in a bit, but it all comes back to him, how he plays the position, and also how he takes care of his body.
Gary Sharp's with us here on the Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Gary, when you're looking at the skill positions at offense, I'm talking running back, wide receiver, I'll even throw tight end in there. Which do you think it's most important that Nebraska gets success out of that position group in order to find success in the offense? I mean, the Huskers struggled running the ball last year and throwing the ball last year. So which aspect of the offense do you think is more important for the 2021 team to be successful?
Good question, Elijah. I will say running back, and I will put this question back on you guys. I know this is your show. But answer me this. Does Adrian Martinez benefit more from a 1,000-yard rusher or a 1,000-yard receiver?
1,000-yard rusher.
Yep, no question. Because then receiving becomes it just becomes easier, right? It just does. Like, guys will be more open if you have a 1,000-yard rusher, and that's not the case the other way around.
Go back to Adrian's first year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Stanley Morgan and J.D. Spielman, and they made big plays. There was really never anybody except for Spielman in the middle of the field. But look at the thing that it took off the plate of Adrian Martinez when he could turn around and hand the ball off to Divine Ezigbo. And Ezigbo could run inside and outside and a little bit catch the ball out of the backfield. I think if you get production out of the running back position, and you must have production out of the running back position. You can't go 4 years, essentially 3 years, with no production, because I don't give credit to the staff for Ezigbo. I give a lot more credit to Divine. I mean, Ryan Held, this is a big year for him because he's got some depth. He's got to find the guys. But if you can get production out of the running back position, I think it makes Adrian Martinez Monday through Sunday a very, very enjoyable time. But if he doesn't have production out of the running back, then we're back in this situation, guys. Who has the second most carries at running back on the team? The quarterback?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. And let me ask you this, Sharpie, from a pitch count standpoint with Adrian, and Coach DiNardo brought this up, where really to keep a defense honest, all you got to do is run a quarterback a couple of times a quarter. So you do that math, it's 8 for the game. Do you think there's enough respect from future defenses with Adrian on the ground, saying, all right, we got to be careful, watch out for his legs, even though Nebraska may not have to run him as much? I mean, how do you tackle that elephant this year with him carrying the ball?
Well, it depends on if they're quarterback design runs. I love the quarterback power game.
Yeah.
I think teams that play Nebraska are going to say right away, and Brett Bielema is doing the same thing, is we respect Adrian Martinez when he pulls the ball down and runs, or there's quarterback design runs. And especially now where he's a little bit trimmer, and most observations in the first week of camp is that his first step is explosive, and it kind of looks like he was when he was a freshman. But everybody's going to say about Adrian, hey, we'll respect your legs, and we're going to pay close attention so you don't take off and start juking us in the open field. But you know what? We're going to be able to pay more attention to your legs because we don't respect your arm throwing the ball downfield. That's where Adrian's legs can come into play. If his arm can help him out, then his legs will take off because they got to respect the ball in the air 15, 20 yards down the field with wide receivers that they could make a living of catching balls that far down the field. I just hope that Nebraska doesn't get into a situation, hey, Adrian looks great, man. He's trim. He's able to run with more authority, that you rely on him running the football a lot. You have running backs. You also have this thing, guys. Nebraska essentially is away from an uh-oh season if number 2 goes down. And he hasn't played a full year in football since he was a junior in high school. So you kind of have to think about that if all of a sudden you look down at your play sheet and you go, whoa, Adrian's got 18 to 20 carries. That can't happen.
Gary Sharp with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Nebraska can, if they want to go with an empty set, no running back, they could bring in Allen at 6'9", Vokalek at 6'6", Manning at 6'4", Torre at 6'3", Betts at 6'2".
Martin 6'1".
Do you think they'll do that? You can do that. Do you think they will do that? Do you think that could feature prominently in Nebraska's offense this year? Just an overwhelming size advantage at wide receiver and tight end.
I think you'll see that more often than not, Mark. I mean, that's kind of your if you're going with 2 tight ends, that's kind of your lineup that you would have, and it can cause some problems with the height. Now, how you use it. The one thing about when you get tight ends that are tall, and especially Austin Allen, who I think he's an old Big Ten guy. If he has another productive season and he's utilized more, that's the thing. We talk about utilizing tight ends. Now you have to follow it up by actually showing a commitment in key moments in the game, whether it be in the red zone. But I think the fact that they can take the size and get into the middle of the field. Sometimes we think size, we think, oh, geez, there's guys that are burners down the sideline. I think it's key, and I look at Kansas City and how they use Travis Kelce. He's a tall tight end. They use him in the middle of the field. And even if Mahomes is off the mark a little bit, Kelsey is so tall, and he doesn't have defensive backs that are on him as tall, but he's able to go up and make those catches. So I think the height across the board, which if you look at, well, you go to camp and you look at the defensive line and the wide receivers, and you think about 2 years ago, the drastic difference in the kind of player that is there, those are the two position groups that you go, whoa, they look like Big Ten position groups now. Defensive linemen are bigger, but wide receivers are much taller. And if you have that, you might as well go ahead and use it. But I like the height in the middle of the field, where I think that will come into play with these guys, and especially the tight ends. But I don't be surprised if you see basically Nebraska's intramural basketball team out there on offense.
It's called the Red Army, right? When you look at that size and the height. And
here's the other thing.
Go ahead.
You made a commitment to recruit size at wide receiver and at tight end. Use it. That's your advantage. Not you're not rolling up against Big Ten cornerbacks and safeties that are 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". You recruited size. Use your size.
That's what I noticed about Missouri in like 2008, I think it was. Like Bo's first year. They came out 5 wide with Daniel. You're just looking across the line.
Rucker, Rucker at 6'6" or whatever.
And look at Chase Daniel was pretty accurate at Mizzou. But there would be times they would essentially say, we're going to play 50-50 ball. And they would throw it up knowing that Macklin or whoever would go up and get the football. That is such a huge advantage. They don't want to always play 50-50 ball. But in those cases, like in the end zone, in the red zone, by the sidelines, where only one guy can catch it, I mean, that's a huge advantage to have somebody that tall.
Sharpie, good stuff, man. Enjoy your weekend. We're getting closer to kickoff. Can't wait for it. Thanks for jumping on with us this morning, dude.
As always, guys, you're my favorite threesome in the morning.
We'll just leave that one be. We're going to just walk away. Going to walk away from that one. That's
knowing that he has multiple threesome options. That's good.
Well, yeah, and we're going to just walk away. Kraynak, enjoy your phone number that's now saved in my phone.
I'm glad you have it, man.
I'm thankful for it, too. Back at you next weekend, Monday edition at 4 with Hail Varsity. Take care. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.